Picture this. It's 40,000 years ago. You wake up and the sky is the color of whetstone. It's raining. Again. It rained yesterday and the day before, and there is no sign of it stopping. You have no roof. Not really. No heating you can just switch on. No phone to check when it clears. No shop to run to. Just you. A handful of people you die for, and a cold gray world that will not stop dripping. So what do you actually do? For a whole week, we tend to imagine our ancestors as always on the move, hunting, gathering, marching across some dramatic landscape. But nature doesn't work on a schedule. Storms came, rain settled in for days, and when it did, our ancestors couldn't just push through it. Getting soaked in a cold climate isn't uncomfortable. It's deadly. A wet body loses heat fast, and out there, losing too much heat meant you didn't wake up. So when the rain came down for days, survival flipped from finding food to simply staying warm, staying dry, and waiting it out. And this happened constantly. We're talking about people who lived through the Ice Age. In a world with wildly unstable weather, long stretches of cold, damp, miserable days where stepping out into the open could genuinely cost you your life. This wasn't a rare emergency. Bad weather was a normal, recurring part of existence, which means surviving it wasn't luck. It was a skill, practiced over and over, passed down across thousands of generations. Your ancestors were, in a very real sense, professional bad weather survivors, and the way they did that turns out to be far more clever and far more human than you'd think. Because here's the thing most people never consider. For most of human history, there was no such thing as waiting somewhere comfortable. There was no dry indoors that just existed by default. Every dry, warm, safe hour your ancestors ever had, they built with their own hands out of rock and hide and fire. A week of rain wasn't just annoying, it was a test of everything they knew. And the groups that failed that test simply vanished from the story. You are descended, without exception, from the ones who figured out the rain. Let's start with the biggest myth. When you picture a rainy prehistoric week, you probably imagine people huddled deep inside a dark cave. For a long time, even scientists believed that, but it's mostly wrong. Living deep in a cave is a bad idea. It's pitch black, the air is bad, smoke from a fire has nowhere to go, and honestly, something with claws might already live in there. Cave bears and cave lions weren't just names, they were roommates you did not want. What our ancestors actually used was something smarter, rock shelters. Not deep caves, but shallow overhangs, a lip of rock jutting out from a cliff or a riverbank, usually facing away from the wind. They'd set up right near the opening, where daylight still reached, but the rock above kept the rain off. It's the difference between crawling into a hole and standing on a covered porch. One is a trap, the other is a home. Think about how much knowledge is hidden in that one choice. Which way does the wind usually come from? Where does the water run when it pours? Is this overhang stable, or will it come down on you in the night? Where's the nearest source of dry wood once everything outside is soaked? None of that is instinct. All of it had to be learned, remembered, and taught. Picking the right shelter before a storm was a skill as real as making a spear, and getting it wrong could kill your whole group, and the location was chosen with real care. The best shelters faced south or east, away from the prevailing wind and rain, catching whatever weak sun broke through. Many sat just above a riverbed, high enough to stay dry if the water rose, close enough to drink and fish. These weren't random hiding spots. Generations returned to the same good shelters again and again, sometimes for tens of thousands of years, because a well-placed overhang was one of the most valuable things a group could own. And they didn't just find these spots, they upgraded them. This is where it gets impressive. At sites across Europe, archaeologists have found strong evidence that Ice Age humans weatherproofed their shelters. They draped large animal hides from the overhang to block the wind and rain, like a curtain across the open side. Some built tent-like structures inside, wooden poles covered with sewn skins, a shelter within a shelter, and everything was arranged around one thing: the fire. Because the fire was everything. In a week of rain, the hearth wasn't just for cooking, it was heat, drying wet clothing and wet bodies. It was light in a world that got dark early and stayed dark. It was protection, keeping predators at the edge of the glow. And placed against a rock wall, the fire did something beautiful. The stone reflected the heat and the light back inward, turning a cold ledge into a warm, flickering room. A whole week could revolve around keeping that fire alive. Someone had to protect it, feed it, shield it from the damp, let it die, and the week got very dangerous, very fast. And starting a fire from scratch in the pouring rain is brutally hard. Wet wood won't catch, sparks die in the damp. This is exactly why keeping an existing fire alive mattered so much. A living flame was a treasure you protected at all costs, because relighting one in a downpour might be impossible. Some groups likely carried embers with them, nursing a cold from one camp camp to the next so they'd never have to start over. When the rain set in, that carefully guarded flame was the single thin line between a warm week and a deadly one. So keeping fire through the wet was a genuine craft. Groups learned to store dry tinder and kindling deep under the overhang, out of the damp, sometimes carrying precious dry material with them from camp to camp. They learned to bank a fire down low, so it smoldered slowly through the night and could be revived in the morning. In the worst conditions, a group that had lost the knack of starting fire from scratch might carry live embers wrapped in bark or moss, nursing a single glowing coal across days of rain. That one ember could be the difference between a warm week and a deadly one. But here's the question that really matters. If you can't hunt because it's pouring, what do you eat for 7 days straight? The answer is that the smartest groups had already solved the rain before it arrived. They planned for it. This is one of the most underrated things about ancient humans. They thought ahead. At Kesem Cave, in what is now Israel, researchers found something remarkable. Evidence that over 400,000 years ago, humans were storing bone marrow. They kept animal bones, still wrapped in skin, for weeks before cracking them open to eat the fatty marrow inside. That's not a desperate animal grabbing its next meal. That's a creature that understood the future, that knew hard times were coming, and quietly put food aside. They had other tricks too. In cold climates, hunters would freeze meat after a big kill, using the environment as a refrigerator. Some groups weighed down meat and sank it into cold ponds, where it stayed fresh far longer than it would in the open air. So when a week of rain locked everyone under the overhang, the well-prepared group wasn't panicking. They were reaching into a store of fat and dried meat they'd set aside for exactly this. The rain wasn't a crisis. It was an inconvenience they'd seen coming. And that ability, to look at a blue sky and prepare for a storm that isn't there yet, is one of the deepest, strangest powers of the human mind. Most animals live in the now. They eat when there's food and struggle when there isn't. But somewhere back there, our ancestors started living in the future. They stored fat for lean days they couldn't see. They looked at a clear afternoon and thought, the rains will come and we should be ready. That single mental leap, imagining a tomorrow and acting on it today, is arguably the thing that separates us from nearly everything else alive. Every skin of stored marrow, every frozen cache, every bundle of dry kindling was a message sent from a person in the sunshine to the same person, cold and hungry, a week later. That is planning, that is imagination, and it kept them alive. So now the shelter's up, the fire's lit, the food's handled, you're dry, you're warm, and you're stuck under a rock ledge with the same 10 people for a week watching waterfall. And this quiet, boring, trapped time might be one of the most important things that ever happened to our species. Because what do you do with all those empty hours? You talk, you tell stories, you teach the children which plants to eat and which will kill them. You repair your tools, scrape hides, sew clothing with bone needles. Someone starts tapping a rhythm. Someone else picks up a piece of charcoal from the dead edge of the fire and drags it across the rock wall, and a shape appears. An animal, a hand, a memory. We often think of the famous cave paintings, the ones at places like Lascaux and Chauvet, as art for art's sake. But sit with the rain for a moment, and another picture forms. Deep time, bad weather, a group huddled by firelight with nowhere to go and nothing pressing to do. That is exactly the kind of moment when a human mind, freed from the hunt, starts to wander, starts to wonder, starts to make marks that mean something. Boredom, it turns out, may be one of the great engines of human creativity. We treat boredom today like a problem to be deleted, a gap to fill with a glowing screen the second it appears. But for your ancestors, there was no escape from it. When the rain sealed the world shut, there was nothing to scroll, nothing to click, nowhere to go, just a mind with time on its hands and a wall in front of it. And a mind like that doesn't stay still. It starts to imagine. It starts to ask why. Some researchers think this kind of forced stillness, not the excitement of the hunt, but the empty hours around it, is exactly the soil that imagination needs to grow. The most human thing about us may have been born from having absolutely nothing to do. And it went further than pictures. Those long trapped hours were when knowledge got passed down. The old hunter describing where the reindeer crossed the river in spring. The grandmother naming every plant on the hillside. The rhythms, the songs, the stories that carried a group's entire memory. All of it transmitted in the downtime by the fire, while the rain sealed the world shut outside. A week of storms wasn't lost time. It was school. It was the library. It was the theater. It was where a culture actually got built. Think about the children especially. On a clear day, kids might scatter, play, get in the way of the hunt. But a week trapped under a ledge put every generation in one place at one time. Elders, parents, and children pressed together with nothing to do but interact. That is the perfect classroom. The young ones absorbed language, stories, skills, and the rules of the group, not in a lesson, but simply by being stuck in the warm circle of firelight while the adults filled the empty hours. Some researchers think this kind of dense, face-to-face downtime was essential for passing on the huge amount of knowledge a human culture needs to survive, which flips the whole question on its head. We started by asking what ancient humans did when they were stuck inside for a week, as if it were a problem to survive. But that trapped, rainy, restless time might be exactly where we became who we are. The talking, the teaching, the art, the planning, the sitting together and making sense of the world. A huge amount of what makes you human may have been forged not out on the thrilling hunt, but under a dripping rock ledge, waiting for the sky to clear. Now, a fair warning, we can't prove every detail of a single rainy week. Weather leaves no fossils. Nobody dug up a diary that says day 4, still raining. Grog is annoying everyone. A lot of this is built from what we know about their shelters, their fires, their stored food, and the marks they left behind. The specifics are informed guesswork, but the big shape of it is solid, and it's a very different picture from the grunting caveman waiting out a storm in a dark hole. So the next time it rains all week and you feel that itch of being stuck inside with nothing to do, remember that your ancestors felt it too. And instead of going quietly insane, they told the first stories. They painted the first paintings. They taught the next generation everything they knew. That restlessness you feel when the rain won't stop, it's ancient. And once upon a time, it built the entire human world. If this made you see a rainy day a little differently, you know what to do. I'll see you in the next one.